Hello again, welcome. I think a few more folks have been trickling in, but we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Ryan Betts. I'm with the National Farm to School Network. I primarily work with our policy team, and today we're going to talk about advocating for farm to school, how to host a site visit. We have a wonderful panel of speakers who are going to share more. But before we get too far into the webinar, I would like to pass it to Andrea because we are offering interpretation as a part of this webinar. So Andrea, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good morning, afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrea. I'm here with the Community Language Cooperative. We're going to be practicing language justice in this space so that we can hear and speak in the language of our heart or in the language that we feel more comfortable in. So we're going to have simultaneous interpretation in English and in Spanish. After I'm done saying this message in Spanish, we're going to turn on the interpretation feature and you're going to see a globe that is going to come up towards the bottom of your screen. Or if you're on your phone or tablet, you're going to see 3 little dots or where it says more, you're going to click there and you're going to select your language. If you are an English speaker only, then you're going to choose English. And if you speak Spanish only, you're going to choose Spanish. If you're fully bilingual in those 2 languages, you don't have to select a channel and you can always speak in whichever of those 2 languages you feel more comfortable in. I do remind you that Spanish is 25% longer than English. So I ask you to speak at a conversational pace, stretch your words so that I can interpret everything accurately, to also remain muted when you're not speaking and to speak very close to your microphone when it's your turn to speak. Hola a todos, mi nombre es Andrea, estoy aquí con la Community Language Cooperative. Hoy vamos a estar practicando la justicia del lenguaje y vamos a tener interpretación simultánea en inglés y en español para que todos puedan hablar y escuchar en el idioma de su corazón o como se sientan más cómodos. Una vez que aprendamos la interpretación, vas a ver un mapa mundo que va a salir en la parte inferior de tu pantalla, o si estás en tu teléfono o en tu tableta, vas a ver 3 punticos donde dice more o más, y ahí vas a poder seleccionar tu idioma. Les recuerdo que hablen a un paso conversacional, se mantengan en silencio cuando no estén hablando, y hable muy cerca a su micrófono cuando sea su turno de hablar. And we can begin interpretation now.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And of course, you can go ahead and see the little globe and interpretation icon and select the language you'd wish to participate in the webinar. So again, we're with the National Farm to School Network. I just want to kind of take a couple minutes just to kind of introduce who we are. Our vision is a nation in which farm to school programs are an essential component to strong and just local regional food systems, which ensures the health of children, farms, the environment, and the economy and community. And to achieve that vision, our mission is to really increase access to local food and nutrition education, to improve children's health, strengthen family farms, and cultivate vibrant communities. And so when we think of why farm to school, kids win, farmers win, communities win. Kids who participate in farm to school eat more servings of fruits and vegetables. By shortening supply chains, farmers keep a bigger share of the dollar. And communities really win when farmers reinvest in the local community and kids take what they learn home with them. So, farm to school, it uniquely sits at this intersection of numerous sectors, and there's, the benefits include public health, education, economic development, and the environment, and more. So when we think of farm to school, there's really no right or wrong way to do farm to school, but we kind of see core elements of farm to school, which include school gardens, the education piece ties into that, and procurement. So really they're all kind of separate, but they all do work together. And when we think about when we're going to be talking more about site visits, what we're trying to, maybe share with decision makers or guests, these core elements, you might feature one core element, or you might feature a little bit of them all. And when we say farm to school, we're really also saying farm to early care and education, because farm to ECE encourages health and wellness, experiential learning, family and community engagement. And it applies those same core elements just for children in settings, where children ages 0 to 5 in the same settings. So this includes, child care centers, family child care homes, preschools, Head Starts, et cetera. It's farm to ECE is a really crucial moment in the life development of a young child where they're really, learning so much and encountering the world in such wonderful ways. So Farm to School Network, our network encompasses an advisory board, partners, many of which I'm sure y'all are partners, which includes 20,000 plus members. And then we have a small core national staff that really kind of helps to work to advocate and promote the farm to school movement. And also as a staff, our core functions as a network, as a staff, we're a hub for connecting people to. So we're a hub for connecting people to information, to resources, networking, to connect people to people. And we're a hub for advocacy, helping to connect people to policy. And this is part of a growing movement. I mean, it's just something that's been growing since the 90s all the way up until now. And we continue to grow the movement through touch points like site visits, which we're going to be able to talk a little bit more about. And our main call to action as a network is that 100% of communities will hold power in a racially just food system. So through Farm to School, we do seek deep transformation towards a strong and just food system. And we do acknowledge that inequities based on race persist, and we will not achieve a racially just food system if we don't dismantle those inequities. And flowing from that is our values of economic justice, environmental justice, health impact, racial equity, respecting workers and educators, as well as animal welfare. So with that said, really excited to transition to talk more about site visits, how they can be a tool, a touch point for advocating for farm to school and ECE. We really have, we're really glad that we're going to be hearing for some great speakers that are, across the country to hear their stories, how they've approached this, but we're also glad to have folks on our team who have much to share on the topic. So I'm going to pass it to Miguel so he can kind of ground us and kick us off into, the positive impact that site visits can have. So Miguel, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. And thank you everybody for being here. I'm so glad that you could join us today. I am Miguel Villarreal. I'm the interim co-executive director for the National Farm to School Network, where I've been in this position since last September. But prior to that, I wanted to share with you that I was a school food service director for 4 decades. And, when I learned that we were having this particular webinar on site visits, I was so excited to participate and listen to others, if you will, other presenters about this topic, because quite honestly, it was the best way that we were able to get the word out in our community. You're going to hear about how, not only do we engage our legislators, but engage our community and everybody in our community, including journalists and the media and just everyone you see in this particular slide that I have I've got listed. The people that were just, every time we had a site visit, we tried to engage as many people as possible. But I want to just share my first experience with the site visit. When I moved out to California 20 years ago, I was a food service director in Texas for 20 years. But when I came out to California, I knew that we needed to do things a little differently because I'd learned that California needed some help as well. I was employed in a school district that had 60 farms surrounding our school district, but yet none of that food was coming into the schools. So I was meeting with farmers, and I had one farmer ask me one day, he said, Miguel, do you think that we could have a site visit at your school where we can prepare a local organic lunch to for our children and other attendees? And I said, absolutely, yes, we can do that. He goes, are you serious? I said, yeah, we certainly. And so we started with one event, one small event, one school. And And that led to many others over the next 18 years that I was in that school district. But truly, site visits truly propel the image and the storyline of why we're doing this work, and it engages so many others. So I think you'll hear some of that today from others in terms of why it's so important to have these site visits. This is one of my favorites, this particular slide that I'm showing you here. We call this Thanks Gleaning. We held it on Thanksgiving Day, and that phrase actually came from one of our dietetic interns. And in this photo, honestly, it's truly the entire community. You see there the names of or the positions or what people hold in that community. They were out there gleaning with us and understanding the work that we were doing. So anyway, I just wanted to just share that with you and say that if you've not done one in the past, you don't have to think big. You can start small, but start, because they're so important and engage your community. So I am going to stop there. And as I said, I'm looking forward to listening to our speakers give us some more information about their experiences with site visits. So Ryan, I'm going to turn it over back to you.
Thanks so much, Miguel. And thank you so much for sharing on Thanks Gleaning. Sounds like it was a lot of fun. So just kind of like one of the things I was wanting to share, I'm going to share this in the chat now. We've just put together a new site visit resource. So I'm just going to kind of quickly highlight a little bit of what we've put together and just some thoughts for consideration. But I think the real star of the show are our speakers, who are going to like actually kind of talk about and embody how this actually shows up in our respective farm to school worlds. But, you know, when we're thinking about who to host, you know, Miguel had mentioned, you know, folks from the federal level. You know, you can think about like, you know, folks from the Senate or the House, also folks from the executive branch or like within agencies. And there's even like special government districts, and I'm from Mississippi. And so like when I think of that, I think of like folks like the Delta Regional Authority, and they represent several states across the South to do economic development. But these are folks, you know, from the federal level who you might want to consider. Also, you have folks from the state. So again, representatives, different agencies, whether that's Department of Ag, Education, other relevant agencies. And then definitely folks from the local areas of government. So, you know, maybe your local school board, you know, even maybe folks within your district, like a superintendent or other administrators. And then you can't forget about folks in the city or the county, whether you're in like an urban, suburban, rural area, all important. And so, you know, just some general considerations, you know, your goals, you know, identify what you want to accomplish, talk about why what you do is important. So, you know, thinking through the goals of what you're wanting to accomplish. And again, that kind of ties in with your vision and your mission of what your program is. So that way you can kind of plan towards what you're looking to create. Plan ahead. You know, it's really good to create an agenda, prepare relevant data, prepare talking points. It's really important to work together. So, you know, include everyone from the farm to school team, maybe your wider, broader community, you know, and you can seek support from state or national networks, such as like maybe your state farm to school coalition or us here at the National Farm to School Network. Be happy to help. Scheduling is definitely a big consideration when you're identifying, you know, the time that a decision maker is available, you know, keep visits concise on schedule, you know, preparation, you know, maybe it's best to do a walkthrough the day before or to gather information on the decision maker visiting. And then finally, promotion, you know, take photos, consider a press release, definitely share on social media. And so when you're kind of practically trying to think about putting this together, you can kind of think of like before, during, and after. And so, like I said, we have a site visit resource that we just a new one that we just kind of updated that is in the chat. So definitely, you know, want to kind of point folks towards that direction. Take a look, you know, and we'll also be sharing this information, this webinar recording, the slides after our presentation today. But anyways, that's enough of me talking. I want to be able to pass it on to our wonderful speakers. And today we have a cast of really great folks: Betsy Rosenbluth from Vermont Feed, Shelburne Farms, from Vermont, obviously, and then Nikki Warner from Minnesota with the Good Acre. And I'll let them kind of share a little bit more about, you know, what they do and a little bit more about their respective organization. And then finally, we have Matt Davis of Matt Davis Communications. He's actually working with us at National Farm to School Network on our Values Aligned Universal Meals campaign, but is a wonderful resource for considering, you know, press needs, communication needs, and so forth. But with that said, Betsy, I'm going to pass it on to you and share more about your experience with site visits.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Yep, and you got the slide up. So I'm not going to say much about my organization other than Shelburne Farms and the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont. Created a partnership back in 2000 and created a farm to school program called Vermont Feed. And we have been doing farm to school, including introducing our first bill in the legislature in 2005. So we've been at this a long time, and we've been offering site visits in many forms over many years in different ways. So I'm going to share some lessons learned and some stories. We have used site visits as an opportunity to both strengthen our network and engage folks in the network, as well as engage decision makers. And for us, we focused on getting support for increasing the investment in farm to school. So it could be investment of dollars, which absolutely we're asking for every year, but also with school boards and superintendents, often it's conflicts with schedules and just paying attention to the school meals program. So I can talk some more about a school leaders campaign that we did really in response to talking to school nutrition directors about what their challenges were. And they found that school leaders really had no idea what the school meal program was about. I think it's improved some since COVID, but so our goal was to launch a school leaders campaign so they're familiar with the program, excited about it, and then make decisions that would be supportive. And with state legislators, it was part of a campaign to increase state funding for both our grants program and to pass a local food incentive, which we did. And I can talk a little bit more about that. So every October, that's when we really organize our site visits as part of Farm to School Month. Just to back up what Ryan said and that you see in the resource, each year we try to be really clear what our goal is. Is it full funding of the grants program? Is it more visibility of the farmers? Is it expansion to early childhood? Is it universal meals? So those were some of the year's different goals, but it's really important to have clear goals because then you're going to back up and think about who are the decision makers and what do we want them to do. So sometimes we'll pick a school site visit in a region where we want to engage those legislators, or a school, you know, in Vermont, there was a number of years where there were a lot of school mergers and we didn't want to lose farm to school programs. And so we would highlight in certain areas. We then think about, so who do those decision makers listen to, right? So is it farmers, school nutrition directors, teachers? Everyone listens to students. You know, it's always strongest when the people who are most effective are sharing their, or most impacted are sharing their story. But we pay attention to, you know, who influences those decision makers. And then sometimes with some reluctant participants, we'll bring in a ringer or a champion. So we've had very supportive US Senator Patrick Leahy. We'll have him attend, and that usually brings along a lot more of the, you know, lieutenant governor, secretaries, state legislators. And so those are just some ways we've sort of leveraged that. Then we plan the event, and we plan hopefully well ahead of time. We typically do a press event followed by like a tour in the garden or taste tests, activities, and school lunch with students. That's sort of been our formula. But it can be as simple or as extensive as fits your capacity. So some years it's really just, bring one person to lunch is all we can pull off. But most years it's a more involved event. And we offer, a farm fresh lunch and student presentations. We make it fun. Some years, one year the school dressed in mascots. One year the kids sang a song, a Grateful Dead song, because our senator loved Grateful Dead. I mean, have fun, right? And then I would frame it like giving decision makers a platform to stand on, right? So asking, especially if media is present, so asking people to speak, not just the champions, but maybe people who aren't familiar, means they have to get familiar with what's going on. And then they, they're there and they're participating, and the goal is to make them champions, right? So I mentioned we chose a school where superintendent wasn't particularly engaged, but he came given all the people coming to the event. We gave him a role speaking, and then he became very supportive afterwards. He just really was distracted with so many other competing priorities. And this is on the screen, you'll see a flyer. So some years we're organizing an event. Some years we do a grassroots effort. So this was a flyer followed up with some, emails and such, where we asked all of our network members to invite a legislator or school board member to a meal. We gave them some tips. The back side, this is a two-sided flyer, had some talking points so they felt, supported, etc. So there's different ways that we have organized these events. The follow-up is really key too. And I know that's in the National Farm to School Network resource. So I always have a flyer or something people can walk away with. We always follow up not just with a thank you, but our request or what we want them to do. So that's really key. When we think about this is, who are the decision makers? What do we want them to do? And then how do we follow up around that? It could be as simple as, thank you, we'd love to come to your committee this year and testify, or we'd love to come to a full board meeting and present to the school board. Whatever it is, just make sure it's clear and you're able to articulate that. We've had a lot of luck with being clear on that. And then we debrief the event to learn for next time, our group who's planning it. And sometimes there's some really unintended consequences. So, good and bad, sometimes things don't go as planned, but there's a lot to learn. One year we had some state senators on the ag committee come. We had an amazing farm fresh meal. We had the kids doing taste tests. The whole thing was awesome. The end of the lunch, the state senator said, well, what really struck me is that there were no cash registers and every single kid was eating the same thing. Like that never happened when I had school lunch. Like, and then it got into a whole discussion of universal meals. And then he introduced that session, the beginning legislation to expand universal meals in Vermont. And that was 6 years ago. We just passed a couple months ago, universal meals in Vermont. So you never know, what comes from some of these events. We also had our Commissioner of Health come to an event in the last couple of years, and he got crowded by kids and staff wanting to take selfies with them, and through COVID, he became this rock star. He did a really good job keeping people safe. And, he was a doctor. Nobody ever takes selfies with their doctor. So he is very enthusiastic about farm to school and kids and, of course, healthy eating and all of that. So there's a lot of good and surprises that come from this. I guess the last thing I want to save time for questions. I might talk a little bit more about our school leaders campaign. So we organized that. This is a page from the toolkit we developed. We also organized this as a grassroots effort where we would find champions in communities, give them some training and support and materials, and have them make presentations, both, starting out with inviting a school leader to lunch and then growing that into a request to the school board and expanding that support. But COVID hit and we sort of got cut off on this, so I can't tell you what the results are. We're meeting now to decide, okay, so what does it look like now a few years later? And more school leaders have been supportive. It's a little bit different. We'll probably reorganize it, but there's a link. You're welcome to look at our materials for that. And then I would say looking forward, we have been including early childhood programs in some of the site visits. It's harder to sit at those tables. But we've had some great events in the gardens, and we anticipate doing more of that as that part of our movement grows. So I just want to plug, don't forget, the full range of site visit possibilities. And that I might stop with that, Ryan, unless there's any specific questions, and happy to answer those at the end.
Yeah. And if anyone has a burning question, feel free to type it in the chat or like raise your hand in the little Zoom emoji. But we will have some time at the end to answer questions. So does anybody have any burning questions for Betsy? Okay. Well, again, we'll have some time at the end for a little open Q&A. But thank you so much, Betsy. This is really wonderful and encouraging and just delightful to hear how a site visit can plant a seed that can emerge so many years down the road and in such an important ways. And yeah, it's wonderful. Really developing those relationships. All right. Next up, we have Nikki Warner with the Good Acre. So Nikki, take it away.
You bet. And I feel like that was just a really great segue, Betsy, because I feel like, the range of site visits can extend beyond the school and the classroom and really onto the farm. So the Good Acre is a nonprofit food hub in the Twin Cities area. I thought I'd just throw up here what a food hub is, just, because we love it whenever schools can have direct relationships with farmers in their area to source produce so that more food from where that school is ends up in that same community. With a food hub, we are working with many small farmers to meet the demands of larger wholesale buyers. And food hubs, focus, at least our food hub, we focus on technical assistance for farmers and also market access. Our mission is to unlock economic opportunities for farmers in our region through a combination of personalized support and market development. And whenever we talk about market development, it really is breaking down those barriers that farmers face in accessing markets like farm to school can open up for small growers. And so that schools can kind of do the most good with their purchasing power, or any wholesale buyer can really do the most good. So instead of sourcing from just one farm, one large mechanized farm, working with Food Hub allows that dollar to go wider because of that ability to aggregate. And I try not to use the word aggregate too much in presentations like this, but really think about trunk loads of produce into truckloads, right? And so we receive produce from many small farms. You'd be surprised how many cabbage boxes fit in the back of a Honda Odyssey. But then in the Food Hub, it's where it gets palletized and then put on trucks to go out to schools, higher ed, hunger relief partners, and so on. If you want to kind of skip to the next slide then, Ryan, I'd say like our skin in the game when it comes to policy is that we've really understood, from operating in this space in the Twin Cities for going on 8 seasons now, is that you can make all the sales calls to nutrition directors until the cows come home to be able to, try to get more local produce and farm to school programs. But if you don't talk to your legislators, if you don't get more grant funding through State Department of Ag, farm to school grants, even USDA farm to school support, if you're not actively asking for that, the schools often don't have the ability to purchase more local produce. And so farm to school, which is, kind of, at least in Minnesota, has been a really great way to generate more participation in school lunch. We have universal free meals now. And so what we like to talk about with our legislators is the economic impact that market access has. Oh, Terius, I see your question about cooperatives and food hubs. Cooperatives are similar, smaller scale often, of like a group of farmers who are pulling their produce together. I think the difference is that the food hub is a central facility, and cooperatives can be, like independent facilities. And the Good Acre is not a farm. So I think that's another difference. We are just, we're the facility, we're a nonprofit, we're a buyer of small farm produce. And I think cooperatives, it's just a little bit different, more based like, more farm coordination. Our farmers are independent of each other, and the Good Acre is the customer. But anyways, back to kind of the story about sharing the economic impact that farm to school can have in a community. We move a lot of produce through our building. And unfortunately, in the state of Minnesota, and I'm sure it's not unique here, sometimes legislators don't worry so much about, universal free meals or hunger-free schools. They don't want to help farmers to help those facing food insecurity in our communities. But what they do care about is economic impact, especially in rural communities. And those are things that farmers and food hubs really can tell a powerful story about with numbers. So our numbers from last year, we moved about $1.4 million worth of produce that we paid to farmers through our food hub out into the community. Only about 6% of that went to K through 12 schools. And by advocating with legislators about how important it is, or what an economic opportunity there is to unlock greater economic impact for farmers by increasing that 6%, if schools have greater access to, in Minnesota, we have the Agri Farm to School grant, which helps pay for produce or local food purchase reimbursements. If they can increase that funding, the demand for those grant funds far out exceeds what is actually given out every year. It's like investing in that has ripple effects in rural communities where our farmers live, work, and thrive. If you want to pop to the next slide, this was kind of newsworthy this session. Minnesota State Senator, when the Universal Free Meals Bill was on the floor for the Senate floor for a vote, claimed that he never met a hungry person in his district. And I feel like that story really illustrated to me how our legislators are not the experts in the fields that we all work in, and how a site visit for this guy could have prevented that comment from even happening if he had been invited to school, learned about the rates of, free school and reduced meals in his own district, has been to a food shelf in his district. On the flip side, we had a trifecta of the Democrat Farmer Labor Party in the governor's office, in the House and the Senate, and it passed anyway. We became the 4th state to make universal free meals a plan. And now, I feel like the opportunities to show our legislators, now that we're in the peak of growing season, that there are seeds in the ground, there are farmers looking for a market, the state legislature and ag committees in states all across the nation spend a lot of time making decisions about how well resourced our farmers are going to be in the face of a changing climate. They make a lot of decisions to give, grants for technical assistance for farmers, to build hoop houses, to use, climate smart farming techniques, soil health investments, water conservation funds. But without market access investment with programs like farm to food shelf, farm to school, those technical assistance investments aren't as valuable without that market unlock. And so one thing that we've done a lot of is, public engagement scheduling requests with our governor and lieutenant governor. We are usually those scheduling requests require like 8 weeks notice if you'd like to invite someone to an event. We've done season kickoff events. Mark your calendars. We have 13 weeks until Farm to School Month, till October kicks off. So if you want to invite a legislator or governor or lieutenant governor to your school or to your farm, now's a great time to submit that request. And also the cool thing about doing policy for Farm to School from the farmer side is that we're not limited to just where our food hub is located in District 66 in Minnesota between St. Paul and Minneapolis. We've got farmers that come from, 100 miles plus to get to us. Who are their representatives? And do they know what awesome work that farmer is doing getting local food into schools? Or do they know that farmers in their district really benefit from investments in Farm to School? So I feel like as much as, the National Farm to School Network is a connector, you have to find those relationships and connect with legislators who are, on ag committees, really like digging them up. I keep that Who Represents Me in Minnesota tab on my computer constantly, because I'm like, all right, who's your rep and who do we need to talk to? Because, in my district, my legislators are already drinking the Kool-Aid. What I really need to do is find out what's my connection to the Steve Drzowskis of the world. And a lot of the times it's the farmer that's in that district that can make an impact. So also, departments of agriculture have been great champions of our work. I think that especially when it comes to Farm to School and the procurement side of things, we see a lot out there. We see a lot of challenges that farmers are facing, especially, challenges that farmers of color face if they're renting, if they don't have irrigation, if they don't have, wash and pack sheds on site. And so I think it's really great for departments of ag to be included in any kind of site visit as well, because it's something they can be proud of. And it's something that if there's difficulties you're experiencing, that maybe those are policy changes that can be worked on during the legislative session beyond just, direct appropriations to schools or to specific programs. So hopefully there'll be many more schools that pass universal free meals, but I feel like we're really in a interesting place here in Minnesota right now where, we'll see what happens in the fall, but our farmers in this state and across the country have the capacity to grow. They just need markets. And so that's a really powerful story to tell. And yeah, that's, one that this morning I had a few legislators come through just to tour our facility, because now that the growing season is happening, lots of produce is coming in. But I showed them the list of farmers in their districts that are their constituents. And I think that makes it a lot more personal for them, because, I might not be their constituent, but if they know that there's people that are, making, building generational wealth, running successful food farm entrepreneur businesses, then they're willing to help and support their constituents in that way. So, I think that'll wrap it up, and I can definitely pass it on to the next speaker, unless anyone has any burning questions.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And so wonderful to hear everything y'all are doing at the Good Acre. Any burning questions? If not, you can put them in the chat. I am going to go ahead and maybe go and pass it on to our next speaker, Matt Davis. So Matt, tell us all about reaching out to the press.
The great thing about being a journalist is I learned how to do things quickly. So I'm going to speak very quickly here just about the value of press. So everything we've heard about site visits is so awesome, right? You get amazing things accomplished when you invite a legislator to your site. Now, every legislator that I know has somebody in their office reading their press clips, which tells us that they value press attention. And if we can do something that legislators value, then they're more likely to help us. And some of the things that I thought Nikki and Betsy really emphasized were, you know, legislators love it when kids take selfies with them. They like positive affirmation and attention, and the press really know how to give it. So without sounding too cynical, I want us to just consider the value of reaching out to press when we're doing this kind of organizational work. And it's real simple. It's really easy for all of us to do this work. I'm a former journalist, and I know that if somebody reached out to me telling me about this kind of event, I would have been kind of interested. So the first thing we want to do is just find out who the journalists are locally. And literally, it's like, which papers do I read? Who are the reporters that I like? How do I get in touch with them? And once you've kind of figured out maybe a list of half a dozen folks, you can find their email addresses. They're often available on the newspaper's website or the TV's website. Like, there might be a form that you can fill out to reach a reporter, but it's not rocket science. People just don't do it very often because we tend to see journalists as like other. It's somehow, but they're friendly if we reach out to them in the right way. So I urge folks to consider who shows your program really strongly, who tells the story of what you're doing. And it's those local farmers, right? It's the Gleansgiving, Thanksgiving, who's going to be in that photograph? Who are those people? And you can mention some of those folks in the emails that you're sending out to reporters. I try and do it a little bit in advance, like a week ahead. And then I follow up with a phone call just to make sure that they're there. And then I also prepare a media kit. So beforehand, I know what I'm going to be giving the reporters. The toolkit Ryan shared earlier on has a sample press release in it, and it has some of these ideas in it. So I know I'm going kind of fast, but all of this idea and these materials are in that toolkit. Can I have the next slide, please, Ryan? If you are sending a press release, these are the 5 things that journalists want to know, and they want to know it real quick. So who, what, when, where, and why. And really the why is the most important thing here, right? We know why we're doing what we're doing. So that's fairly easy, but just saying, you know, this legislator is going to be here at this time. We will also have people from the farm to school community. We might have some school food directors here. We'll have school children here who can talk about it. Maybe the what might include a visual, like something tantalizing for reporters. Broadcast press and photographers really love the idea that maybe there's a cook-in, some people like eating food, maybe the legislator will be eating from a menu. Like, those kinds of nice little photo opportunities really help persuade press to show up. Be as precise as you can. You've got this incredibly well-planned agenda because we've done all these walkthroughs and plans, so you can tell them when exactly they'll be able to get the photos. And then the why, I think placing what you're doing in part of a national movement is really important. So you can talk about other states have passed these incredible policies. We're doing this. These are some of the things that are going on. That can be a good way of persuading journalists that, oh, this is important. This is a good thing to come to. The other thing that really, really works, and I'll have the next slide now, please, Run, is opinion piece placement. This is from my website. It's a joke, how to write good. That's obviously a funny way of saying how to write well. Ha ha ha, I'm hilarious. 3 things you need to do. Tell us a story to make us care. So the stories that the people have to tell really grab people's attention. So if you personally have experienced something to do with farm to school, you can tell that story in as precise and as heart-rending a way that really gets people's attention. You don't need to write in hard words, the shorter the sentences, the more clear you are, the plainer you are, the better. And then you need a clear call to action. So if in your state there is a bill about farm to school, or if you want more of this to happen, or if you want more legislators to care, make sure you have that in there. These opinion pieces are quite easy to place in your local media. It's a lot more successful, we have found, trying to place opinion pieces by people who have strong opinions about this than to get journalists to come to the events. So you might do your press outreach and maybe a few journalists show up, maybe one or two, fantastic. But at the same time, you can also try and write an opinion piece that will also get placed in your local paper. So it's just two things that I'd encourage you to think about. I always tell people that you really deserve press. This cause is really important and it deserves the media's attention. And there are so many other things the media pay attention to. Why not you? Like, why not this? So please, I really wish you the best, and I look forward to the Q&A. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. But for now, I'll turn it back over. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Matt. Wonderful. And I've kind of stopped sharing my screen so that way we could open up the floor to folks who have any questions for anyone who's spoken, Miguel, Betsy, Nikki, or Matt. We'd love to be able to help you with anything around site visits. So feel free to type it in the chat, or if you feel comfortable coming off mute or raising your hand. Don't be too shy. Don't be too shy. Anybody have any questions?
Hi, I'm Marina. I'll ask a question. Thank you, everyone. It was great to hear all the speakers. And you all had some really good ideas. I work for a SNAP Ed program, so that's based out of a county health department. So we've done site visits in the past, but we really have to focus on education. We're not allowed to advocate. We're like double not allowed to advocate because we're USDA funded, and then we work for local government too. So just wondering if any of the speakers or anyone else on the call just has advice for maybe how to do more of the education piece, and then like maybe we could certainly include other people that are able to advocate. We just have to be very careful with our program specifically and what we're able to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say you would clarify that in your goals and decision, thinking about the decision makers. So the goal would be to inform people, and that is not advocacy, that's education and awareness. And so we have not run into any issues with anybody in a similar situation when it comes to awareness raising, informing, having lunch, talking to kids, understanding how it works. And then there's other partners who would follow up, like we're a nonprofit, so we could get asked to follow up as like, hey, so-and-so seems super supportive. Then we might do a legislative ask or something like that. But, information awareness raising is fine.
Yeah, I'll add, loving what Betsy is saying, framing it as an educational thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to a specific legislative ask or things like that. But one of the real benefits of doing this is it starts building the relationship with your legislator. It builds the relationship with your partners with your legislator. And that honestly is a big thing. Some things that I've heard from people who did site visits or met their legislator is like, before meeting their legislator, they think, oh, there's some scary person out there. But then once you meet them, it's like, oh, they're actually a human being just like you and me. And so building that familiarity, after people have done site visits, I know people who have gotten contact information from legislators, so they've been able to like contact them directly and be able to do that. So it's really, really powerful for that relationship building for the future as well.
Yeah, and just to echo Betsy and David's comments, you know, I feel like the 90% of advocacy is education, because those legislators are not experts in what you do. But you are, you know, and so yeah, the benefits of just, you know, and actually I think that that's the invitation to just come and learn more is something that legislators really want to do, and that's something that they have to spend a lot of their time doing. So, you know, I think it doesn't hurt to do a Google search just to get real clear on what's okay and what's not, you know, for peace of mind. But you're the experts, and, you know, legislators should be coming to you to learn about the issues that are affecting those in their community. And you don't have to, you know, be afraid to be comfortable in that role. And you, especially, you know, as a nonprofit, there's a lot of worry like, oh, can we even? But the stakes are high, you know, we really need more people to know about, you know, the issues that, you know, families and communities are facing, and the knowledge that you have is something they need to know.
My name is Natasha Smith. I am with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. I'm the farm to school coordinator here for procurement. So I wanted to also put a small input in there, and I like to call it the politicking of the politics. When if you're not able to do so, it's the way to follow the rules without crossing boundaries. You know, you could support your local chamber of commerce on another event and leave, you know, 50 copies of something. I assure you there's at least 10 legislators walking through there at any given time, because the businesses, the people, they've built that, they're that depot to businesses and the people that they need support from as well. So I just thought you might want to use that tool. I know sometimes it's just a reminder to us. I'm sure you've probably taken avenues in that shape, form, or fashion to figure out how to best do what you need to get done and what you want to do comfortably. But I definitely enjoyed all of I had no questions. I enjoyed all of your input. I really, really enjoyed hearing about press. I had to add that. That will be a new folder for sure. I'm gonna eat them up. They like I'm going to do a new spreadsheet of press in the state of Florida. And now I'm gonna have to look them all up and find them by districts, counties, and cities, have them on Excel spreadsheets. And, you know, I can't send them, you know, thank you gifts, but I'm going to send them enough emails where they'll either block me and know who I am. And so if I play the evil guy because they're tired of me, my counterpart, who is the nicer, sweeter girl of us farm to school ladies, can be, you know, whisk them away and get the job done. So I really appreciated that.
Thanks so much, y'all. Anyone else have any questions? We still have a few more minutes, plenty of time.
Ryan, I would just add to what Natasha was saying that a little bit more, like it's the stories that matter, right? And so the site visits and sharing stories with the press and in the State House, it's the personal stories. Like when we talk to people who are nervous about events or testifying, it's like, well, what does it matter to you? What's your, you know, what impact does it have to you? What's your story? And you know, that's what people remember. So I just want to emphasize that.
If nobody has a question, I do have another just quick comment or idea just kind of back to the press thing. So at the Good Acre, we built this, we call it the veggie selfie wall. That was just a big board that we got a local artist to do a beautiful mural with produce and our logo in the background. And everybody that comes through our facility for a tour, that's where we end, and people take their pictures. I went to a farm to school event with legislators during Farm to School Month, the last one that I did, and they had bales of hay and the produce items that they were incorporating in the meal as just like a little photo station for the press ops. So don't forget those little extra things that you can do to make a lasting impression, or have pictures of the farmers, you know, and connect folks with, like, you know, the crops and the hard work that goes into processing whole, fresh, unprocessed produce, you know, and turning it into delicious school meals. A shelfie. I like that, Miguel. Yeah. Veggie shelfie wall.
So much for sharing that awesome idea of this photo moment. That can be really powerful. Does anyone else have any other questions? Still have a couple minutes.
I put a link in the chat about campaign, This Farm Feeds Vermont Kids. So it was, you know, we always have a farmer coming to the schools who sell directly, but it didn't really show the breadth that there's like 100 farms across the state selling to schools in early childhood. So we did a sign campaign where all the farms would put a roadside, like a campaign sign, This Farm Feeds Vermont Kids. So when you're driving on the roads in all parts of the state, you see, oh, you know, you've got that visual. And then we put together like a little slideshow, having everybody take a picture and submit it. And then we have a collage of all the farms selling, and we can show that we're not talking about one or two farmers. We're talking about a substantial number in every county of the state. So that's been really successful for us to try to highlight farmers more, who are difficult to spend the day in the State House or even at an event.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I know there's one question that I have via David, my colleague, kind of help inspire it. You know, so some people might feel nervous about inviting like a senator, representative, or even a school board member. So maybe just real quick, maybe some words of encouragement for them as they kind of reach out.
I will say, just face your fears, and you can't win if you don't play. So you have to get those asks out there. I think even in the state legislative session, you know, trying to send emails and get appointments, especially if it's an elected official, it's easy to get buried in their inboxes. And as someone who worked from home for, you know, almost 2 years during the pandemic, as soon as, you know, I was vaccinated and boosted and all of that, and the legislative session was off to a start, I bought myself a pair of policy pants and just went right down to St. Paul into the Capitol offices to talk to the legislative aides. Sometimes those aides, those connections with their schedulers or assistants, are great relationships to cultivate as well. And Valerie, it's the people's house. You don't need an ID to go into any state government buildings, as far as I know. You just walk in and you just ask to see, you know, if they have an opening in their schedule. So the state Capitol rooms, those hearings are open to the public. The offices are open unless otherwise stated. At least for the Senate and House here in Minnesota, that's how it works. I think it's probably similar in most other states. But for a federal senator, email their legislative aide. I actually had one of my staff members go to Washington, D.C., who they got appointed to the Fruit and Veggie Advisory Committee, and I set up some legislative meetings for them. I just sent an email, said who on your team works on ag and food policy, and are they free? So yeah, my policy pants. It was a lot of years of stretchy ones. So yeah.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
just say,
Betsy.
yeah, there are people too, like just chat, just like anybody else in the grocery store. They so appreciate you giving them the opportunity to learn something and to talk to a constituent. I have found that they're super appreciative. But I think sometimes we have to remember, oh yeah, they have a kid playing soccer, talk about that, or whatever it is. Just to keep it at that personal level.
And Valerie, if you're asking about like security at your site, sometimes I've had to just put cones out to reserve a parking spot. Sometimes, like whenever the lieutenant governor came to visit us for one of our growing season kickoff events, I had to provide really detailed events about what the agenda is, who's speaking, in what order, where they can park, how long they can stay, where their staff can sit and set up. So, it's just being really thorough about event planning whenever you're inviting senators. We had Senator Tina Smith come by just a couple months ago for a BIPOC Farmer Roundtable event, and her team did most of the heavy lifting. We just had to get the farmers in the room. So it really just depends. I feel like I was on the phone way more with Lieutenant Governor's staff than with our state senators' staff. It really just kind of depends. So don't let that be a big obstacle. So yeah.
Well, thank you all again so much. Again, to Miguel, Betsy, Nikki, Matt, and even Andrea for helping us with interpretation today. Before we kind of wrap up, and of course, all of y'all who have joined us and asked these wonderful questions and who are sitting there and learning and picking up and maybe getting ideas for your own site visits. But definitely, we always want to extend the invitation to become a National Farm to School Network partner. If you're planning a site visit, we would love to be a resource for you. And yeah, with that, just want to thank you all again so much. And we'll be sharing all of this after today. So just be looking on the lookout in your emails. So thanks again. Talk later.